So the aim of this next hour and a bit is to give you a helicopter view. In other words, we've always spoken about Corona. Corona has been pushed in our face. And if something's right here, that's all you see. And you lose track of everything that's happening around us. So we're going to go back and look at what's happening around us. This is a little warning. You will never unlearn what you will see now. So accept that what's going to happen to you now, you will carry along with the rest of your life. And I believe it's a positive thing. It'll make you more awake, and it'll answer many of the questions. When did this start? Why does it happen at all? Who is behind it? Why are the media all streamlined? Why do they all have, I'm talking about the mainstream media, why do they have the same story? And why is it affecting the whole world? Is it really a pandemic? And of course, our reactions. And then many people ask me, how long do you think this is going to happen? And we're going to talk about that as well. So what I've done is I've gone along and I've taken certain spots, like a crumb trail, like tracks in the sand. And I say, okay, the guy was here, then he went there, and then he went there and there and there. Like a bushman would follow an animal, and then ultimately, how did we get to this thing here? What was interesting, I spent quite a lot of time in the beginning of the year trying to work this out, trying to find solutions. And when my solutions were introduced to our officials, to the Minister of Health, UNAM, the World Health Organization, and that, they didn't get anywhere. And I've had an old patient that told me, he was a lawyer, and he says, if somebody doesn't do something, there are only two reasons. They either can't do it or they don't want to do it. That's very simplistic. Sometimes it's something in between. And if the minister doesn't want to implement something, it's because he can't do it. That couldn't be the case because we offered from the business side to do everything for him. He would have just had to say, yes, go ahead. And that didn't happen. So he didn't want to have it happen. So I went looking and I came along this guy, Patrick Wood. There's a website here. In 1800, this was a French, I think, philosopher and scientist, Henri de Saint-Simon, and he basically elevated science above every other human entity to, you could say, virtually a new religion. He says the only solution in the world will be from scientists. And then that thought was picked up again around about 1930, 1932 at Columbia University. And Columbia University is one of the oldest, 5 oldest universities in the United States, near New York. And they had a group that called themselves technocrats. It was scientists, it was social scientists and researchers, a bunch of young, really intelligent guys, and they started this movement. You could say it was a movement initially. What's interesting, science of social engineering. When I see social engineering, I always jump to those words and see what can I find. So when you go into the internet, the first thing, you find a description of social engineering, which is really what is phishing. In other words, you get an email, somebody's trying to get your ID number or some bullshit, and this is what we call phishing. But then I saw that here, they talk about engineering within social science. So I jumped to another search, and this came up there. And this is really interesting, and I'm going to give you a minute to read this. Okay, so how would we sum this up? What is this? Very simply, this is propaganda, okay? So propaganda is old. It's just become more and more and more sophisticated, and it's omnipresent, it's everywhere. Okay, then we went to the 1938s, and there is King Hubbard. Now, King Hubbard was a researcher for the oil industry, a scientist. He basically worked on researching how much oil they can pull out, the logistics of it, the economics of it, and he grew up in the oil and gas industry. And he also obviously was in contact with the technocrats, and this is what he did. He developed this technocracy study course. In other words, what they did is they took all their ideas and theories and put them into, you could say, the Bible of technocracy. And this is what it's called. And these are text items that come out of that. And I think this is really important that we read this, because this is the red line that will go right through our day today. And if you look at these markers here at the bottom, biology, climate, natural resources, just remember those, they are all resources. And one of the resources is HR. What does HR stand for? A human resource. So we, as humans, in their world, are part of the resources. These were the 7 commandments. I've highlighted them to bring out the essence of this, and to try and convey the knowledge of why this is happening to us and where we are heading. So, number 5, specific registration of all the consumption of each individual, plus a record and description of the. So, this is what's coming. Then this whole thing moved on another 30 years later, basically. And Brzezinski, a very, very bright guy, also from Columbia University, a social scientist. He was a young guy then, and he ended up being one of the most influential personalities in the 60s to, you could say, 2000, even 2000, whatever. He changed the world. And he took that Technocracy book and he updated it and he sophisticated it from his social science perspective, and he wrote this between 2 ages. And this is fascinating because with that information, he got into contact with the Rockefeller family. I'm going to jump back here to the Rockefeller family. Now, this is the grandfather of the Rockefellers, and this is what's written in Wikipedia. And Wikipedia is normally very nice about the Rockefellers. So what's important, salesman, he was a con artist, and he used a fake name as a Dr. Livingston, and he tried to cheat farmers out of their land. Okay, so Devil Bill also sold laxative with oil, and that's where the name snake oil comes from. Bullshit medicines that don't work, that are fake. And this name has stuck. So how did it start? He's up there. That's Devil Bill. And Devil Bill always spoke to people. I said he cheats his boys so that they become sharp. So he cheated them on purpose. He actually taught them to be crooks. Okay. So the whole dynasty moved on. And this is the guy that Brzezinski came into contact with. Okay. And John Rockefeller, he tried to stamp out every bit of competition, and nothing was too bad and nothing. He killed everything. Okay. He wanted control of everything. So this is the philosophy that's behind these guys. And these guys stuck up in the middle 60s, and they exchanged ideas, and they formed a lethal relationship. Why? Because Rockefellers, the United States had abandoned their gold standard. So their money was linked to some invariable government, fiat money. It's like paper money. One day it's up, one day it's down. This is what we're still living with. And because he was in banking and oil and resources, he didn't want his wealth linked to something that can go up and down all the time. He wanted something real. So when Brzezinski came along and he says, listen, we've got a new system, we want a new economic order that is linked to resources, he was very much taken in by that. And he then, with his monopoly thinking, thought, well, maybe we can just take America, but America is not good enough. Maybe we can take the whole world on. And at that stage, I'm sure many guys thought they were crazy because nobody could think that they could do that. But then it didn't stop there. They got on very well. They had taught each other technocracy, and obviously Rockefeller had inputs into Brzezinski and vice versa, and then they went to the Bilderberg meeting. What's the Bilderberg meeting? The Bilderberg meeting is a little place in Holland called Bilderberg, and this is the description, Wikipedia, and I've tried to stick to these descriptions and not add anything on. What I want to show you is the membership list. And this is the membership list of 2010 to 19. So you could say it's the recent membership list. And if you look at this, there's our Jeff Bezos. Look here, he's the owner of Amazon, okay? There's our friend, okay? He's the chairman of Microsoft. He's resigned as a chairman currently, but at that stage he was still the chairman of Xylotos. Then there's a guy, chairman of the Washington Post, okay? So media influence, and we'll get back to these guys. And then of course our modern, some of us are members of LinkedIn, okay? It's like a professional database that you can put your businesses in. So here we have a group of guys that gets together once a year to discuss certain things. And guys, I'm sure they don't just discuss certain things. They exchange ideas and they say, okay, let's do this and this, because otherwise it would be useless. So out of that, in the 70s, they came back to America and they basically decided this is such a good idea, we have to formalize it and we have to do something with it. So they created the Trilateral Commission. What's the Trilateral Commission? Once again, the definition here, to foster closer cooperation, Japan, Western Europe, and the North. And initially, it was only those guys. In the meantime, it incorporates virtually, you could say, 60, 70% of the world. And these are the websites, so you can go there and have a look. What's interesting, their logo in those days, and look at this logo. What's this logo stand for? Renewable energy, okay, 2030. So let's move on. This is their website today, and you can see it's not just those countries anymore. It's virtually, it's gone into a at least westernized world conglomerate of things. And there is our German compatriot. I haven't actually gone and looked. I'm quite sure that our German chancellor is part of that group, okay? What happened then? Remember, that was 1973. 1974 came something really interesting. The Trilateral Commission then went and seeded, or otherwise invited, members from the then United Nations. So all the leading guys in the United Nations were then incorporated into the Trilateral Commission. Okay? So, and then what they did is they went and they basically infiltrated, you could say, infiltrated the United Nations. And this is what they said in 1974 already. So now this thing is moving into the established bodies. And originally the United Nations was basically just a good idea to organize after the First World War the Western allies, hopefully to prevent a better war. And it was there with all its subsidiaries. And we'll go back to those later. So this is what they wanted to do, and this was done in 1974. As you can see at the bottom, this is a copy and paste, a screenshot from the original documents. And remember, this was nearly 50 years ago. If we jump back, 77, remember we're now at 74, now we go to 77. Here's our friend Brzezinski again. He's now security advisor to the president. It's probably one of the most important positions in America. And Brzezinski is a Trilateral Commission. Jimmy Carter is a member of the Trilateral Commission, and his Vice President Mondale also. And at that stage, about 66% of the American government were members of the Trilateral Commission. Then something interesting happened. Brzezinski, at the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, China was basically like North Korea today. It was in shambles. Mao was gone, and there was Deng Xiaoping, or whatever you pronounce it. Brzezinski went to China, and he says, listen, guys, you've got a problem. Communism is fading. We've got the answer for you. And he basically gave him the whole blueprint for technocracy. And if you think back, that was like 40 years ago. China has taken this blueprint, and it's done so well with everything that was in there that it's today the #1 technocracy in the world. And we'll see at the end of this talk. Okay? So the Americans went there, they gave them money, they gave them ideas, and the big corporations, they all ran to China and they set up things. And they basically helped China get up on its feet. Okay? I think possibly today America is regretting it because the Chinese have done such a good job because they're intelligent, but this is hard work. Once again, You've got Trilateral Commission, Mr. Kissinger is one as well. So how are all these bound together? And we can go back, and there I've introduced another body that is crucial in this game. It's the Council of Foreign Relations. Here's the definition, and remember, the Wikipedia definition is always pretty easy. It doesn't want to go into any radical statements. So this was even before the Bilderberg meeting, and even before. Bilderberg was started in 1954, and then Trilateral Commission came later. So let's have a look. This is the modern setup of how the American government works. At the top is this council, and then they've got a logo which says, you probably can't read it, it says omnipresent. It's a Roman logo of omnipresence. That's their logo, so meaning they are everywhere. And this is private bipartite organization, membership by invitation, only about 5,000 members in 2017. So who's in there? Of course, the president, the vice president, the ambassador to the United Nations, and then this is the president. There's Mr. George W. Bush, Clinton, another Bush, Jimmy Carter, Gerald Ford, Richard Nixon, and vice presidents, and so on, and then Secretary of States, we can go. So the next one is National Security Advisor. Here is Zbigniew Brzezinski, and there's Henry Kissinger. So they are members of the Council of Foreign Relations, which virtually is the sum of the American government. And then what's interesting and which is important for us today, here is Columbia University, the first one listed. And the second one is Johns Hopkins University. And Johns Hopkins is a university that advises the WHO. Okay? So they all know each other extremely well. In fact, they're part of one big unit. Okay? And they function as one big unit. What has that got to do with the news that we hear every day? Okay? And it's been exciting to see how synchronized all the news are. Here again, we've got the Council of Foreign Relations, we've got the Bilderberg Group, and then on the other side, we've got the TLC, Trilateral Commissions. If you look at all these, Time Magazine, there's all the Forbes magazine, Fox News, NBC News, everything is in there. And then something really fascinating for me was, here are our friends. There's Mr. Google, there's YouTube, there's Facebook, Amazon. That is the big picture, and it's not good, it's not bad, it's just the way it is. I'll get to the German media. There is something they call a transatlantic axis. Now, one would say, look, this is America, what's it got to do with Europe? This is the extension of the American empire, okay? So the council is where the decisions are made or the planning is done. This is where Mrs. Merkel and whoever is jumping around and saying what they're saying, and this is what we are focused to, okay? We know nothing about the rest. And then, of course, the implementation is via the news distribution channels, and this is all the German media, okay? So let's go back. There's one crucial link. It's the agencies, the news agencies, and there are only 3 in the world. They control everything. Reuters, DPA, and Associated Press. And they decide where this stuff is going. Okay, and here you have ARD, whatever. You guys know this better. And does it make sense that these newspapers are always telling the same story? Let's carry on. Let's jump to the United Nations. Remember, I said they were seeded by the Trilateral Commission guys, and the guys are still there today. And there, down there, we've got the United Nations, and there's the World Health Organization. Okay. If you want to know why they're doing what, you have to go and look where their money is coming from. So where is their money coming from? And until recently, America was the main funder. Second, China. You can say roughly 700 million. China, roughly half, okay? And then Japan is reasonable, and there's a lot of other countries together. These are the public donors, the governments. And then Donald Trump went along and said, listen, I've had a guts full of WHO, whatever they did wrong, I don't know, I haven't gone into that direction. But he said, we're going to stop funding them. I think he got upset because China got too much of the cake there. And then, of course, Bill Gates, who's the biggest private funder, as we will see just now, he got upset because now he has to put out the money if he wants the thing to carry on working. And remember, these are not just a once-off thing, it's an annual thing. So it's a lot of money. But if you want a lot of influence, you have to put down a lot of money. So this is where Bill Gates is. I went to the WHO, look there. And these are the private funders. And this is for this year and next year. Bill and Melinda pay 84% virtually of their funding, their private funding. Can you imagine that when Bill Gates says, listen guys, you do this and you don't do that, that they would listen to him? Can you imagine that? Could you also imagine if Bill Gates say, you buy my vaccine, that they would tempt it to do that? In medicine, we call it a perverse incentive, okay? You do something to your patient because it pays you something into your back pocket, okay? Like, if Ciba-Geigy comes along and I prescribe that medicine, whether there's another one, but if I prescribe that medicine, I get a kickback, okay? Somewhere, sometime. Okay. This is another summary, and these are more of the other events. Look, and here are all the events that have been in the news quite a lot. But in the mainstream media, these are all positive. And look at that, John Hopkins again, and there's Oxford, there's the CDC, we'll talk about, and that's where his vaccinations are taking place. And there's an interesting program, ID 2020. Here's the BBC, and then the British Ministry, and then of course newspapers, and then this thing was run last year in, I think, September, October. They're not even shy anymore. But the problem is, unless you have a pep talk like I'm giving you now, you focus on a virus, it's like we watching TV here, meantime our house gets emptied at the back. So let's go to Gavi. Gavi is Bill Gates' big program. And they make vaccines for poor little kids in the world. So here he's building factories, even if they make a loss. I think it's a mixture between let's just push the money, let's just get everything into place, and then when the stuff's ready, let's just roll it out, okay? So I'm going to jump back to something else. Let's go back to the Rockefellers. This is their website. It's easy to find. You will find it, and it's all there. This was written in 2010, a report on what will happen in XYZ. They didn't say 2020, but they said in the near future. And I'm going to give you time and look at these 4 scenarios. They had a table and they say, we have 4 scenarios. And I'm going to ask you one question afterward. Which scenario will you pick after you've read that one? Okay, let's just go there. Lockstep. This is what we're experiencing now. This is also something that is described in a way that no sane person would say, this is what I want, okay? So obviously that also is something that you wouldn't want. This is called framing, okay? You put 4 scenarios down where one of them is obviously the best. And the best scenario is this. So clever together sounds amazing. So what are they trying to do? They want to give you a solution that everybody is obviously then going to take. Okay? Lockstep is what we're experiencing now. Pressure the people, give them hell, tell them a new story every day, tell them get them into a state where they don't know what's coming and going. Authoritarian leadership with limited innovation, citizen pushback. This is exactly what she's been describing. Okay? So this is the follow-up on that 2010 report, and this has been publicized 21st of April. Remember, in March, we had the first lockdowns. And a month later, they come out with this thing. So what is this? All based, let's jump back, they're talking about a testing action plan. And I'm going to jump back to this slide, which you've seen, based on a test that is bullshit. So the test is not the issue. Okay, it's just a tool. And obviously people will not like it. So what are they going to do? They create a message handbook, explore the handbook. So I obviously downloaded the handbook and I looked into the handbook. Changing communication habits won't happen overnight, but we have to start, and I hope you'll join us. What's the word for that? Propaganda will carry on. So how are we going to use this? It gives you all the key ingredients, that's the research I've done, what the audience feels, how you should basically create the message, and the do's and don'ts. And then, of course, at the bottom, this is where Martin Wucher is, because he's spreading misinformation in their world. How do you deal with Martin Wucher? Okay? So, the crux of this whole thing is basically to do anything, but the one thing that stays behind is testing, 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 because testing creates the whole house of cards, and then to let the guys come out of the house of cards and to remove the pressure, you say, okay, we need to trace you. So this is out of that book. We launch a plan to test. Then we launch community healthcare workers. Those are the guys that you said they count how many people are next door, and Namibia has got them as well. Our minister has recruited people that go around and check on you. They are these guys. Healthcare corps. Guys, normally a corps used to be part of the army. It's a word from the army. Testing and contact tracing, and this is where we're going to. And this friend, he wants that exactly. He doesn't know, I'm sure he doesn't know what's happening to him. If we go deeper into this, this is what they want to have. You want to have a tag, and it's going to be used at schools, at your work, everywhere you go, and of course on ticket purchases. And we'll get back to that. But there is a problem, and this is inside the text. What is the problem? Here we have it. Obviously, there are some problems because there's still some laws that prohibit that. Giving data to everyone, making them accessible. But the Department of Health on the March 9th is working on laws to unblock this. So they're busy removing those laws. So that means all your data, your medical data, your whatever is to be measured from you, from your pulse rate, from your body temperature, all the diseases you've ever had, all the genetics you have given them with your test. Remember, they've got your genetics now. If I'm a rapist and they suspect me of rape, they will come to me and they'll take exactly like that, a cotton bud, and they'll rub it on my cheek and they'll do those testings. My genetic code is tested the same as this test. I don't know if they use it for that, but theoretically they could. Remember, this testing is the access, it's the door to your genetics. And theoretically and practically, the technologies are in place to sequence your whole genetic code. This is the guy that invented the PCR test. He doesn't live anymore, but he got the Nobel Prize for it. He actually died 2 or 3 years ago. But apparently this is what he said. Once again, the test is useless, but of course we use it for other means. Look at this. Contact tracing, the different wording you're supposed to use. Not say contact tracing is vital, because that's very theoretical. Trace your steps and make a list. Sounds cool. This is how propaganda works. Stop the virus in its tracks. So it's like a manual. If you want to do good speeches, get that book and learn from it if you want to convince people. One step further. Now give the audience an opportunity to do your part, do it for them before it's too late. In other words, rush them into becoming active. Not just talk to them, get them involved. You have to go out and convince 3 other guys. Me being me, I looked at this handbook and I saw Hathaway Communications made this pamphlet. So I went and looked, who is Hathaway Communications? There. Science of Aspirational Communication. This is what they have as their marketing logo. What's interesting here, obviously they use it to brag. We have selected client. Bill Gates, Rockefeller, Mr. Ford, WHO. Then the world gets excited. Remember, everyone's locked down, they don't understand it, and they just want out. And now comes a group of doctors, and they come out and say lockdown is bullshit, it's harming people. everybody knows it. So we say, yes, at least somebody is talking sense. Let's support it. And even Martin Wucher went and signed this flippant thing. And then he actually, when he had time, he went and he read it. And I thought, oh, shit. What did I sign? I signed that I support frequency PCR testing for a certain group of people. You see, this is how it works. You give something nice on top. There's a hamburger which is brown on top and it's got a few sesame seeds, okay? Underneath it, it's got the base. And in the middle is the toxic stuff. But it looks flippin' nice. And this is our biggest challenge in today's times, to separate the good things from the bullshit, okay? So we are back to testing, and then we look again at the narrative that's happening everywhere, the wording. And if you look at this lady, she is Mrs. Climate Change. Now, we all think climate is changing. Yes, it is changing. I personally am not sure, is it human, is it other stuff? I don't believe it's just human. I think it's a bit of both. But it's a good rhetoric to get people into doing things that they want. And if you hear Vision 2030, smart cities, and it's all from the same guys. This is the World Economic Forum, 14th of October, 3 days ago. Okay? Provide specific registration and consumption of each individual plus a record and description of the individual. This I put in there from the technocrats. It's the same thing. In their time, they couldn't do it, but now we can do it. This is what the World Economic Forum, Mr. Schwab, Charles Schwab, I just read his book, The Great Reset, and I read it. It's a fascinating story. I first read Patrick Wood, and then I read Mr. Schwab. And then you know what you have to look for, and then it's like an open cards. You look right through it. This is another company. This is a international marketing management agency, okay? And we're back to the same story. They want our data because our data are the new gold in the world. That is where businesses come from. That is where influence comes from. And they want the human resource of the whole world to be manageable. It's pretty much like a pig farm, okay? Every pig's got a tag in its ear. When it goes past it, it gets 5 kilograms of that. How long has this been going? If you look at this, this is a search that was done for a patent search called so-called patent search. And Mr. Richard Rothschild of Great Britain applied for a patent and registered the pre-patent for testing COVID-19, and that was done in 2015. So if it's a novel coronavirus, how did they know it in 2015? And it carries on, and this is, I think, this is a database of medical equipment that is being shipped around the world. And here they were talking COVID diagnostic kits and instruments. And it was 2.6 billion, 2.3 billion. So it was shipped around the world in 2017 and 2018 already. When this came out, this thing was publicized in the internet on the 5th of September. And on the 6th of September, they changed the wording. They changed it to medical whatever. What they didn't change is this code. So obviously one could refer back to it. This is how it works, guys. The real world that we have to be concerned about is how many people are dying. That is the bottom line question. And the answer to that is very, very few. So it's not a pandemic. It's not a real serious threat like we've had in the first talk. And these are the numbers from the big boys. So if they actually have a problem because this is so small. And we've got 7.8 billion people and 1 million have died. This virus that they cooked up is just not good enough. They'll probably have to make another one. Okay. So how does this work? You create a fake disaster that, of course, creates the fear. You watch the reaction of the people and you start guiding them. Then you create guilt and fear in kids. Like you say, if you don't wear your mask, you're going to kill your granddad, and if he dies, it's your fault. Okay? This is how it works. And you create perceived problems. Let me give you a real-life example from us. I've been a dentist for over 30 years. We've been taught hygienic measures, and we've employed them for 30 years, and absolutely nothing has happened in that time. All of a sudden, and it'll come, I will be required to have air purifiers, disinfectant my air, and. I spoke to a German colleague of mine last week. Hygiene measures per year, per practice, were about 17,000 euros per year. They will now be about 36 to 50,000 euros a year. So we've created a new market out of thin air. Business. So how do you amplify stress? You say we're going to open the borders, and then when you're nearly opening and then everybody's ready, you say, no, we're going to close it for another week. Or we open the borders with the airplane, but you're not allowed to drive in with a car. Or you wear a mask from 8 to 10, and from 11 to 3 in the morning, you don't have to wear it. Okay? Everybody is at each other's throats. You say he's a corona this and he's that. So within family, within friends, we've heard the neighbors are now splitting on you. Do you think that relationship will ever recover? You will always remember that about your neighbor. And you test the reaction, and then you pull back. And you say, let's open the lockdowns, but we can only do it if you test. And everyone will accept it. That is the perceived solution. It's a really, really sophisticated system. And the ultimate goal is to get the human resource under control, into manageable properties. David Icke is a very outspoken guy, and of course he's very outspoken, so they've put the label of conspiracy theorist. By the way, Wikipedia has also been paid by these same guys, okay, and fact checkers, and the whole flippin' lot, okay, so there is actually no secret there. So David Icke was labeled as a conspiracy theorist, and I just want to go back to that thing. The Warren Commission was the commission that was created by the government to look up who killed Kennedy, who shot Kennedy. And if the government had been behind it and the government sets up the commission, the chances of the government being found guilty is very slim. Now, I don't know who killed Kennedy. It's just the setup. And then, of course, a lot of people started arguing and asking questions. And within the CIA, the psychological operations branch said, listen, guys, don't deny it. Just call these guys consistently conspiracy theorists. That word was weaponized, as they say. In other words, if somebody comes to me and say, do you know X, Y, Z? And I say, that guy is not kosher. That's all I have to say. And I ruin his reputation forever. I don't provide any facts. I don't give them any data. I just say something, and if he says, why, what's wrong? I say, I mustn't say anything like that. And you leave it. I can tell you now, I love these conspiracy theorists because they are the guys that talk about stuff that governments don't want to be talked about. So the word, giggle about it, enjoy it, be proud of it. That's the start to more information. I'm not saying it's the right or wrong, but you get a big picture. It's like a puzzle. And the more the more puzzle pieces you have, the clearer the picture. Now, this is David Icke's pyramid, and you can imagine when he goes on the internet and he publishes this on YouTube, it takes virtually 1 second and he's off YouTube. Okay? It's a beautiful depiction of what I've been talking about. Now, I went from a different angle because if I had given you this thing and this was next to it, you would have said, yeah, Wucher is also a conspiracy theorist, and it would have been done because I would have been labeled and then I'm stuck in a box. So I didn't go that route. I gave you a crumb trail. I don't ask you to believe what I say. You don't have to deny it. Just go home, sleep over it, and make up your own mind. Okay? So, a fake event with fake testing, and you get pushed into a direction that they want you to go in, to accept testing, to be going all along what they want. And this is the question, how long will we carry on with this? And we go to the World Bank. Let's assume the World Bank knows what's coming. Let's assume they've got good data. And in their documents, they say it started in April and it's going to carry on 5 years till 25. What happens now? Okay, we've spent the majority of the last hour talking about where all these philosophies and ideas came from, what they're intending to do, and see and learn from the top technocrats in the world where this is all going. So, China, remember, it was given the technology, the ideas, everything that they needed in about 1980 by the Americans, and China ran with it. And I'm quite sure America might be feeling sorry or might have second thoughts about this because China and Chinese, being intelligent people, they took this whole thing and they ran with it. And this is what's come up. They've got the technology, they've got the ideas, and they've introduced what we call, or what they call, the social credit score. Now, the social credit score has got a huge central database where everything gets stored. In order to facilitate the data transfer, they need 5G because anything else would not be good enough to run this massive amount of data. Out of that and into that will be put your criminal history, all your company reports, your financial systems, your behavioral systems, your compliance with companies and your own commitments, government regulations. Remember, here is all the government's stuff, inclusion in industries, and then you've got certain sectors that go after 2020. And then on the government side, nobody will be left behind. Remember, this is the slogan that you will find in modern rhetorics, 2030, and a global world and a new economic order. Nobody's going to be left behind, for sure. Nobody's going to be left behind. If you look at the downsides here at the bottom, we've got travel privileges, career opportunities. Yes, it's always the good stuff mixed with the terrifying stuff. If you ask many Chinese, they will think this is great because they're used to the system. They're used to this type of government control. Many people in the world would not want to live like that. How far have they got? They've come a long way. And if you look, they started implementing this actually in 2017. Target dates is in 2020 for implementation, as you will see here at the bottom. And this is, so they're pretty close to having their first phase implemented. And there are some videos that are around. Just Google China social credit system, and you will find an endless amount of really interesting, fascinating videos that'll really show you what's going to happen there. If we jump back into maybe 100 years back, 200 years back, you would have people at the bottom, that's you and I. We would elect people that we could trust, people that we knew had credentials that would be able to represent us, to look after us in a certain way. And they then went upwards into institutions, whether it be local authorities, governments, and with the governments, they interacted with higher up levels. And ultimately, it was a bottom up power of influence, power of need, power of the power came from the people. Now, in the last 50 years, or you could say ever since, technocrats have come into function, have sophisticated their systems, the whole world has really been turned upside down. At the top, we've got the 1% that do the planning. They do it according to their own needs, to their own philosophies, and of course, to their own ethics. And this is the crux. They use technologies that are fantastic. They have got finances that aren't fantastic. They're modern in any way. The question is, have they got the ethics? Have they got the really what it takes to look after people, or are they primarily looking after themselves? And these groups have influenced the WHO and in our country, in Namibia, Ministry of Health and Social Services. Now, everything Namibia has been experiencing in the last 8 months or 7 months has virtually been influenced by the Ministry of Health, through our minister, through whoever he instructs to do what they do. And at the end, the guys that implement it is the police, the army, even to the poor security fellow at the door that has to tell you what mask to wear and where to wear it. It's an absolute shambles. It's a world upside down. And we at the bottom, we sit with this panic, with this lack of knowledge, with this lack of overview. And ladies and gentlemen, friends, this is why you are looking at this. I would like you to walk out here today and have a big picture. So from here on, you decide what are you going to do. As Stephen Covey says, there are two ways to living life. You either act or you will be acted upon. Let me just repeat this. You either act yourself or you will be acted upon by somebody else. We have a choice. Don't think you're small. Don't think you are helpless. We are the people who have got choices. We are the people who can make decisions and sit down and decide for yourself, what do you want your future and the future of your children and your grandchildren to be look like? Do you want to run life as a pig farm where you've got a tag in your ear, you walk past a scanner and you get 1 kilogram of food? Everything from your body temperature to your feces gets measured and you get told what you can consume in a day. I believe you've got a roadmap now. I believe you can look at this and I believe you can make your own decisions. Have fun. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy this. Don't let me tell you what to think. You can think yourself. Have fun. Thank you.